There is a leaf growing across the tropics right now that kills bacteria on contact, and published studies confirm it eliminates Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and even antibiotic-resistant MRSA without alcohol, without chemicals, and without a factory. Hospitals across South Asia have used it for wound care for centuries. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly which 5 plants replace your entire bathroom cabinet and how to grow every one of them at home. Hi, I am Harry, and this is Garden Explained with Harry. Right now, the global hand sanitizer market is worth over $2 billion a year. The oral care market exceeds $50 billion. Soap and body wash adds another $25 billion on top of that. Every one of those products sits in a plastic bottle on your bathroom shelf, and every one of them runs out. You buy it again and again. That is the business model, dependency on things that expire. But there are plants growing right now in the Middle East, in India, in sub-Saharan Africa, in California, and across Southeast Asia that produce the exact same results. They do not expire. They regenerate. And the science behind them is peer-reviewed and published in university laboratories from Riyadh to Iowa. The industries that sell you these products do not talk about these plants. Not because the plants do not work, because the plants cannot be patented, branded, or sold at a 90% markup. The leaf from the introduction belongs to a tree called Azadirachta indica. Most of the world knows it as neem. In India, it is called the village pharmacy. In Sanskrit, the name is Nimba. In West Africa, it is called Dogon Yarrow. Over 1 billion people live within walking distance of a neem tree right now. In rural India, neem leaves are placed inside grain stores to prevent insect contamination. They are added to bath water for skin conditions. They are crushed into paste and applied directly to wounds. This is not fringe medicine. This is the default healthcare system for roughly a quarter of the human population and has been for thousands of years. In 2016, Al-Zohari published a review in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine, confirming that neem leaf extract demonstrates broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity against both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. The active compounds include azadirachtin, nimbidin, quercetin, and gallic acid. Each one attacks bacterial cells through a different mechanism. Together, they create a defense system that commercial sanitizers cannot replicate because those products rely on ethyl alcohol that evaporates in seconds and leaves nothing behind. In 2000, Sai Ram and colleagues published a study in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology showing neem does not just kill bacteria on the skin surface. It stimulates macrophage immune response at the application site. Your own immune cells become more aggressive against remaining pathogens after you apply it. No commercial hand sanitizer does that. In 2002, Biswas and colleagues demonstrated in Current Science that neem leaf extract at concentrations as low as 2% inhibits bacterial growth comparable to pharmaceutical-grade antiseptics. 2%. A handful of leaves in 2 cups of water. And Subhapriya and Nagini confirmed in 2005 in Current Medicinal Chemistry that neem is effective against MRSA. A leaf from a tree fights what modern antibiotics increasingly cannot. Here is how you make it. Pick mature neem leaves. Wash them. Air dry for a day. Boil a generous handful in 2 cups of water for 15 minutes until the liquid turns deep green. Strain through cloth. Cool it. Pour into a spray bottle. That is your hand sanitizer. It lasts 2 weeks refrigerated, longer with a small amount of witch hazel added. The tree grows in a large pot near a south-facing window indoors. In warmer climates, it grows outside as a full-shade tree. One tree produces more leaves than a household could ever use. That covers what you put on your hands. But what about what you put in your mouth every morning, and why the answer has been growing in the desert for 7,000 years? The tree is called Salvadora persica. Across the Middle East, it is known as miswak. In South Asia, the twig is called datan. In East Africa, it is simply the chewing stick. This is the oldest documented oral hygiene tool in human history. Archaeological evidence places its use at over 7,000 years. Sub-Saharan African communities from Senegal to Tanzania still use it as their primary dental care. And in 1987, the World Health Organization formally recommended Salvadora persica for oral hygiene. Inside a single miswak twig, you find benzyl isothiocyanate, which kills Streptococcus mutans, the bacterium most responsible for cavities. You find natural fluoride ions that remineralize enamel. You find silica that polishes teeth without synthetic abrasives. You find tannins that reduce gum bleeding. You find saponins, which means the twig actually lathers when you chew it. You find vitamin C that repairs gum tissue. And you find sodium bicarbonate that whitens teeth. All of that in one twig. No tube, no plastic. In 2003, Al-Otaibi and colleagues published a controlled trial in the Journal of Contemporary Dental Practice, testing miswak against conventional toothbrushing with commercial toothpaste. Miswak performed equally for plaque removal and gingival health. In 2000, Darout and colleagues studied habitual miswak users in Sudan who had never touched a commercial toothbrush. Their periodontal health was better than populations using modern dental products, and in 2004, Almas and Al-Zid confirmed antimicrobial activity against Streptococcus mutans in the laboratory. The twig kills the bacterium that causes cavities. Published, confirmed, repeatable. The oral care industry sells $50 billion of paste every year containing synthetic versions of compounds already present in a desert twig that costs almost nothing. Commercial toothpaste was invented in the 1800s. Miswak was used for 7,000 years before it existed. It was not replaced because it was inferior. It was replaced because it could not be boxed and sold at markup. Here is how you use it. Find a twig roughly the width of a pencil. Peel back the bark from one end. Chew the exposed wood until the fibers splay into soft bristles. Brush your teeth with those bristles. The fibers release antimicrobial compounds directly onto teeth and gums. One stick lasts about a week. When the bristles wear down, you trim the end and chew a fresh section. Salvadora persica grows in a pot on a sunny windowsill in sandy, well-drained soil. It tolerates drought and neglect. Seeds are available online. One small tree replaces every tube of toothpaste you will ever buy. 2 plants. One replaces your hand sanitizer. One replaces your toothpaste. But your bathroom has more than 2 shelves. Here are 5 more plants that replace almost everything else sitting on them, and not one requires a plastic bottle, a barcode, or a monthly trip to the store.
Here is something that should bother you. Prehistoric humans did not have toothbrushes. They did not have floss, they did not have fluoride rinses or whitening strips or electric sonic devices that cost $200. And yet when researchers examine ancient skulls, they find something unexpected. The teeth are good, in many cases better than ours. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer remains have confirmed this repeatedly. Before agriculture, before processed grain, before sugar, human mouths were remarkably healthy. Cavities were rare, gum disease was almost non-existent. And the question that nobody in the dental industry wants you to ask is simple: what were they using instead? The answer appears in the archaeological record across multiple continents and multiple millennia. Between 3,500 BCE and 3000 BCE, the Babylonians were cleaning their teeth with twigs, not random twigs. Specific twigs from specific trees, chewed at one end until the fibers separated into soft bristles. By 1600 BCE, the Chinese were doing the same thing. By 1000 BCE, the practice had spread across the ancient world. Egypt, Greece, Rome, the Indian subcontinent. Every major civilization, independently and without contact, arrived at the same solution. A twig from a certain kind of tree, chewed and applied to the teeth, kept the mouth clean. These were not primitive people making do with what they had while waiting for something better to arrive. These were sophisticated cultures that understood materials, medicine, and engineering. They built pyramids and aqueducts and irrigation systems that still function today. They chose the twig deliberately. They chose specific trees deliberately. And they passed that knowledge down for thousands of years because it worked. In 2012, a team of researchers examined dental remains from a Neolithic site in Sudan dating to around 2000 BCE. The teeth showed minimal decay and strong enamel despite a grain-heavy diet that should have caused significant damage. Chemical analysis of the dental calculus revealed plant microfossils, specifically phytoliths, embedded in the hardened plaque. Those fibers matched the wood of a specific tree, a tree that still grows today across North Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. This was not folk medicine. This was not superstition. This was a technology that worked so well it survived for 7,000 years without modification. And then in the space of about 70 years, it was almost completely erased from Western consciousness. Not because it stopped working, because something more profitable arrived. But before we get to what replaced it, you need to understand the scale of what existed before. Walk through the old city in Sana'a, Yemen on any given morning. You will see men moving through the market with a small stick protruding from the corner of their mouth. Walk through Kano, Nigeria at dawn, and you will see the same thing. A woman on her way to work, chewing the end of a pale twig, scrubbing her teeth as she walks. Visit a village in Rajasthan, India before sunrise. An old man sits on his porch working a fresh green twig against his gums, spitting occasionally, taking his time. The routine takes 5 to 10 minutes. It has looked exactly like this for centuries. During the Islamic Golden Age between the 8th and 14th centuries, scholars documented the practice extensively. It was not optional. It was prescribed. Before prayer, before entering the mosque, before entering the home, before sleeping and after waking, before and after journeys. On Fridays especially, the practice was woven so deeply into daily life that it became inseparable from the culture itself. Millions of people across the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa, and Central Asia performed this ritual 5 or more times per day. The tool was a small stick cut from the arak tree, also called the miswak. The chewed end separated into soft bristles. The wood itself contained antibacterial compounds, natural fluoride, and silica. No paste needed, no factory, no supply chain, just a twig from a tree that grew in the same region where the people lived. Studies conducted centuries later confirmed what those scholars already knew. The miswak reduced plaque. It reduced gum inflammation. It inhibited the growth of bacteria responsible for decay. The World Health Organization itself recommended it as an effective tool for oral hygiene as recently as 2000. In India, the tradition runs equally deep but through a different tree. The Charaka Samhita, one of the oldest surviving medical texts in human history, prescribes chewing a fresh twig as the very first step of the morning hygiene routine. The Ashtanga Hridaya goes further. It describes which type of twig suits which body constitution. Bitter twigs for one type, astringent for another. This was not vague folk advice. This was systematic, individualized oral medicine practiced across an entire subcontinent for over 2,000 years. Across sub-Saharan Africa, the chewing stick tradition developed independently using dozens of local tree species. In Senegal, they call it sothio. In Nigeria, it goes by different names depending on the region and the tree. In Namibia, in Ethiopia, in Ghana, in Tanzania, scientific studies of archaeological excavations across the continent established that early African populations had remarkably healthy teeth with very low rates of decay. Researchers attributed this directly to the combination of chewing sticks and whole food dates. The tradition persisted for millennia. It still persists today in rural communities across the continent. 3 continents, thousands of years, billions of people across dozens of generations, all using the same basic method. A twig from a specific tree chewed into bristles applied to the teeth and gums. And then in 1 century, a tube of paste and a plastic brush replaced all of it, not because the tube worked better, because the tube could be sold. The modern toothpaste tube emerged in the 1890s. Before that, tooth powders and homemade pastes existed, but they were not mass-market products. The tube changed everything. It was portable, it was brandable, it was consumable. You squeezed it empty and bought another one. The toothbrush went through a similar transformation. From handmade brushes with animal hair bristles to factory-produced nylon brushes stamped out by the million. The real revolution was not dental, it was commercial. Toothpaste companies spent the 20th century convincing an entire planet that the only legitimate way to clean teeth was a branded paste from a factory applied with a manufactured brush twice a day. Anything else was primitive, backward, unhygienic. The marketing worked so completely that the question stopped being asked. Nobody asked whether the old method worked. The old method had simply been reclassified as something people did before they knew better. Today, the global toothpaste market is valued at over $19 billion for a product that is consumed daily, repurchased every few weeks, and never questioned. Every human mouth becomes a recurring revenue stream from childhood until death. That is the business model. Not health, not cleaner teeth, revenue, and the waste it generates is extraordinary. 1.5 billion toothpaste tubes are thrown away every single year. Each one takes approximately 500 years to decompose in a landfill. The tubes are made from layers of plastic and aluminum fused together in a way that makes them virtually impossible to recycle. In the United States alone, 1 billion plastic toothbrushes are discarded annually. Globally, that number reaches 23 billion toothbrushes per year. Plastic handles, nylon bristles, none of it biodegradable. All of it sitting in landfills or floating in oceans for centuries. A chewing stick biodegrades in weeks. It requires no packaging, no shipping container, no petroleum-derived ingredients, no manufacturing facility. It grows on a tree that has grown in the same soil for thousands of years. Cut a branch and the tree continues. Use the stick and throw it on the ground and it is gone within a season. The entire life cycle leaves nothing behind. Meanwhile, according to the World Health Organization, over 2 billion adults worldwide suffer from tooth decay. 520 million children have cavities in their baby teeth. The planet spends $19 billion a year on toothpaste. 2 billion people still have rotting teeth. The product is not solving the problem it claims to solve. 3 continents developed the same solution independently and maintained it for thousands of years. It left no waste, it cost nothing, it worked. And in the span of a single century, it was replaced by something that fills landfills, empties wallets, and still leaves half the world with decaying teeth. That is not progress. That is a sales campaign mistaken for one. Now let me tell you what it replaced. The tree is called Salvadora persica. In Arabic, it is known as arak. The twig cut from its branches is called miswak. It is an evergreen shrub or small tree that grows 6 to 7 meters tall with a spreading, dense crown. It is native to a belt stretching from tropical Africa through the Arabian Peninsula to India and Southeast Asia. It grows in arid conditions. It tolerates poor soil. It tolerates drought. It tolerates neglect. It survives in places where almost nothing else will grow. When you cut a fresh twig from this tree about the length of a pencil and the thickness of your small finger, and you chew one end for 30 seconds, something happens. The wood fibers separate. They splay outward into soft, flexible bristles, natural bristles, produced by the wood itself without any manufacturing process. You now hold a toothbrush that grew on a tree. But it is more than a toothbrush. The wood contains compounds that toothpaste manufacturers spend millions trying to replicate synthetically. Natural fluoride is present in the fibers. Silica, a gentle abrasive that polishes enamel without scratching it. Sulfur compounds that inhibit bacterial growth. Vitamin C that supports gum tissue repair. Sodium bicarbonate, the same baking soda that whitening toothpastes advertise on their labels. Tannins that reduce gum inflammation. Essential oils that freshen breath. All of it inside one twig. No factory, no tube, no plastic, no chemical processing. The second tree is neem, Azadirachta indica, native to the Indian subcontinent. In India, it is called daitun, and over 80 million people still use it every single morning. The neem twig works on the same principle. Chew the end, the fibers splay, brush the teeth, but neem brings its own chemistry. It contains compounds called nimbidine and nimbin that exhibit potent antibacterial effects against the specific bacteria responsible for plaque formation and gum disease. Studies have found neem extracts comparable to chlorhexidine, the gold standard antiseptic used in clinical dentistry, but without the staining and taste distortion that chlorhexidine causes. Two trees, two continents, same principle, same result. A free, self-renewing, biodegradable dental tool that contains its own cleaning agents, its own antibacterial compounds, and its own breath freshener, all in a stick that grows on a tree. The science inside the miswak twig has been studied extensively. Researchers have identified more than 10 distinct bioactive compounds in the wood. The most significant is benzyl isothiocyanate, which makes up between 68 and 86% of the essential oils in the plant. This compound disrupts bacterial respiration. It causes proteins inside bacterial cells to clump together, effectively killing or disabling the microbes that cause cavities and gum disease. Clinical trials comparing miswak users to toothbrush and toothpaste users have found comparable results in plaque reduction and gum health. In some studies, miswak users showed lower rates of gum bleeding. The antibacterial effect of miswak was found to be similar to that of fluoride toothpaste when tested against Streptococcus mutans, the primary bacterium responsible for tooth decay. The World Health Organization reviewed this evidence and in 1986 formally recommended the use of chewing sticks for oral hygiene. That recommendation has never been withdrawn. It still stands today, nearly 40 years later. Here is what that means in practical terms. The most widely respected health organization on Earth looked at the evidence and said, yes, this works. That endorsement did not appear in a single toothpaste commercial. It did not appear on a single product label. It was not taught in a single Western dental school curriculum. The endorsement exists, the awareness does not. Now here is the part that changes everything for you. You can grow Salvadora persica in a pot, on a windowsill, in your home. The tree is native to arid regions and is officially hardy in warm climates, but in colder regions it grows perfectly well indoors in containers placed in a sunny location. You need a pot at least 16 to 20 inches deep with good drainage. Use sandy or loamy soil that drains freely. The plant does not like wet feet. You can start it from seeds or from cuttings. Seeds should be sown in well-draining soil and kept warm. A south-facing window works. Cuttings from mature plants root readily in sandy soil. Once established, the tree requires very little. It is drought tolerant. It does not need heavy fertilization. A balanced, slow-release fertilizer once a year is enough. It grows slowly but steadily. And once it reaches a usable size, you begin harvesting twigs. While a single indoor pot won't yield enough daily chewing sticks for a whole family, cultivating this ancient tree at home is a fascinating way to connect with dental history. You cut a fresh twig, you peel back the bark on one end, you chew until the bristles form, you brush with gentle circular motions along the teeth and gums, you spit and rinse with water. That is it. That is the entire process. The same process 7,000 years of humans used before you. For neem, the growing principle is similar. Neem thrives in tropical and subtropical climates but adapts to indoor container growing in warm, bright environments. A fresh neem twig, about 15 to 20 centimeters long and as thick as a pencil, serves as a complete oral care tool. The fibers clean mechanically while the compounds in the wood fight bacteria continuously as you brush. One twig, no tube, no plastic wrapper, no factory production line, no shipping container crossing an ocean, no chemical preservatives to extend shelf life, no marketing budget to convince you it works. It just works. It has worked for 7,000 years. It works today. A twig that grows on a tree generates zero recurring revenue for any corporation. You cannot patent a tree branch. You cannot brand a wild plant. You cannot create a subscription model for something that regrows itself after every harvest. There is no tube to sell monthly, no refill pack to ship quarterly, no premium whitening version at twice the price. The tree grows. You cut a twig, you use it. The tree grows another one. The transaction is between you and the plant. No middleman, no shareholder, no quarterly earnings call. The toothpaste industry depends on three things: daily consumption, monthly repurchase, and the universal belief that no alternative exists. A tree that replaces the product and regrows its own supply threatens every single link in that chain. While modern toothpaste is highly effective at delivering decay-preventing ingredients like fluoride, global economic disparities and lack of dental infrastructure mean that billions still suffer from untreated decay. In areas without access to commercial dental care, traditional alternatives like the miswak offer an invaluable, scientifically validated line of defense. The miswak recommendation from the World Health Organization has been public knowledge since 1986, 40 years. In those 40 years, the global toothpaste market grew from a few billion to $19 billion. The recommendation changed nothing about how the product was marketed, nothing about what dentists were taught, nothing about what consumers believed. This is not conspiracy. This is economics. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter public consciousness. 3 generations of people in the West grew up without ever seeing a miswak twig. Not because anyone deliberately hid it, because no one profited from showing it. But the tree does not care about profit margins. It cares about growing. It cares about spreading its roots into dry ground and producing branches in the sun. It has done this across 3 continents for thousands of years. It survived the rise and fall of empires. It survived colonization. It survived the entire 20th century industrial revolution that tried to replace it with a plastic tube. And it is still there, still growing, still producing twigs that contain more dental compounds than the paste on your bathroom shelf. The miswak is sitting in a market stall in Medina right now. The neem twig is being chewed by a farmer in Gujarat right now. A Salvadora persica seed is germinating in dry soil somewhere in East Africa right now, pushing its first root downward in silence, beginning a process that started 7,000 years ago and has never once required a factory to continue. For 4,000 documented years, human beings cleaned their hair with roots and leaves and dried fruit husks. Egyptian physicians recorded plant-based washing in 1550 BCE. Indian families passed the knowledge from grandmother to granddaughter for over 100 generations. Native American communities built entire ceremonies around the act of washing hair with desert roots. Every continent had its own version. Every culture had its own plant. In 1934, Procter & Gamble released Dreeny, the first mass-market synthetic surfactant shampoo. Its active cleaning agent, sodium alkyl sulfate, was derived from chemical processes heavily utilized for heavy-duty industrial cleaning, including stripping oil from factory equipment. Within 20 years, that compound became the standard in every commercial shampoo bottle on every store shelf in the Western world. Within 1 generation, 4,000 years of plant-based hair washing vanished from common knowledge. Today, the global shampoo industry generates $36 billion a year. Every bottle on that shelf is a repeat purchase. Every repeat purchase is revenue. A plant growing in a bucket on your porch is a one-time decision that no corporation can monetize. That is not a conspiracy. That is a business model. Here is what the bottle replaced. Certain plants produce a compound that foams naturally in water. This compound cuts oil, lifts dirt, and rinses clean. But unlike the synthetic version in commercial shampoo, it does not strip the natural oil layer from your scalp completely. Traditional cultures that washed with these plants never experienced the cycle that modern shampoo users know so well. The stripping, the dryness, the overproduction of oil, the need to shampoo again the next day. The product created the problem it claims to solve. The first of these 5 plants has been growing wild across Europe for over 1,000 years. Museum conservators still use it today, and it might already be growing in your yard. It is called soapwort. Its scientific name is Saponaria officinalis. That first word, saponaria, comes from the Latin word for soap. The Romans named it, they knew exactly what it did. Roman soldiers used soapwort to wash wool tunics in the field. Medieval textile workers called fullers used it to clean freshly woven fabric before it went to market. The plant grew so commonly near wool mills that it earned the folk name Bouncing Bet, after the washerwomen who worked the cloth. If you walk through the English countryside today and find soapwort growing wild near old stone ruins, you are almost certainly standing near the remains of a medieval mill. The plant outlasted the building. Here's the part that should bother you. The British Museum uses soapwort solution to clean antique tapestries. The Smithsonian uses it on delicate historical textiles. The Abegg Foundation in Switzerland uses it on fabrics that are 500 years old. These institutions will not risk synthetic detergents on irreplaceable artifacts because the chemicals are too harsh. They trust soapwort instead. If a museum considers commercial soap too aggressive for a piece of cloth, what does that tell you about what you are putting on your scalp every morning? Soapwort grows in USDA zones 3 through 9. It tolerates poor soil. It spreads aggressively once established. You can grow it in a container on a balcony or let it naturalize in a garden bed. One planting becomes a permanent supply. You crush the leaves or roots in water and it lathers. No processing, no packaging, no factory. You might have pulled this plant out of a flower bed last summer thinking it was a weed. If soapwort served all of Europe for 1,000 years, there was a counterpart doing the same work across Asia for even longer. In India, they call it retha. In English, it is known as the soap newt. It comes from a tree called Sapindus mucoracea. That family name, Sapindaceae, translates directly to soap of India. Western botanists named it that because even they could not deny what the tree does. Ayurvedic texts reference retha as far back as 1500 BCE. Families across the Indian subcontinent have used these dried fruit husks to wash hair, clean laundry, and polish jewelry for over 3,000 years. The method is simple. You take the dried shells, place them in a small cloth bag, soak them in warm water, and squeeze. The liquid lathers, it cleans, it conditions, it rinses without residue. A single soap nut tree begins producing fruit after about 9 years. Once it starts, it produces for 90 years or more. One tree, one lifetime of shampoo, no bottles, no subscriptions, no quarterly earnings reports. Millions of people across South Asia still choose traditional herbs over modern bottles, maintaining a direct connection to the trees in their courtyards. Soap nuts cannot be patented. They cannot be branded. They cannot generate the kind of recurring revenue that a plastic bottle with a 6-month shelf life creates. When something free outlasts the person who planted it, there is no business case for telling anyone it exists. But the oldest documented use of a plant for hair washing did not come from Europe or Asia, it came from the American desert. The Navajo people call the root of the yucca plant amole. The Hopi people use it. The Pueblo people use it. The Apache people use it. Ethnobotanical records from the 1800s document over 40 distinct uses of yucca across Native American communities. Hair washing was one of the most important. The yucca root contains compounds that foam aggressively when pounded and mixed with water. You dig the root, strip the outer layer, crush the inner flesh, and work it in a bowl of water. It produces a thick, rich lather that cleans hair without leaving it brittle or dry. This was not folk medicine. This was infrastructure. In Navajo tradition, the wedding ceremony requires both partners to wash their hair in yucca suds from the same basin. The plant was so central to daily life that it carried ceremonial weight. You do not build sacred rituals around something that does not work. When the reservation system forced Native American communities into dependence on government trading posts, commercial soap and shampoo arrived in boxes. Within one generation, traditional knowledge of amyli began to fade in many communities. The pattern is identical to what happened in Europe and Asia. A free, self-renewing plant was replaced by a product that required purchase, transport, packaging, and repurchase. The dependency was the point. Yucca grows in sand. It grows in gravel, it grows in desert heat with no irrigation. You can grow it in a large container with fast-draining soil and almost no attention. The plant does not need you, you need the plant. The next one might be the most important of all 5. Its name translates directly from Hindi as fruit for hair. It is called shikakai. Shikakai comes from a climbing shrub called Acacia conchana. It has been used across India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka for at least 2,000 years. In many Indian villages today, grandmothers still wash their hair with shikakai, not as tradition, not as nostalgia, as standard daily practice, because it works better than the bottle on the shelf. Here is why. The human scalp maintains a natural pH of about 5.5. This slightly acidic environment protects against bacteria and fungal growth and keeps hair follicles healthy. Shikakai solution sits at a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. It matches the scalp almost exactly. Commercial shampoo typically runs at pH 6 to 7 or higher. Every wash pushes the scalp out of its natural range. The scalp responds by overproducing oil to compensate. The oil makes hair look greasy. The greasiness drives another wash, another bottle, another purchase. The cycle is not a flaw in the product. The cycle is the product. Shikakai does not create this cycle. It cleans without disrupting the balance. The hair does not overcorrect. The scalp does not panic. The person does not need to wash again the next day. The plant did not get replaced because it failed. It got replaced because it worked so well that there was nothing left to sell after it. Shikakai grows as a climbing shrub in tropical and subtropical climates. The dried pods store for months. Ground into powder, they ship anywhere in the world. A small bag lasts longer than 3 bottles of commercial shampoo. The last plant on this list is one you almost certainly already own. It is sitting on your windowsill right now. You have probably used it for sunburn, maybe for a scrape or a dry patch of skin, but you have never once thought of it as shampoo. It is aloe vera. Egyptian physicians called it the plant of immortality. They documented it in the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts ever found, dating to approximately 1550 BCE. Across the Caribbean, families have used aloe gel to wash and condition hair for generations. In India, aloe has been part of Ayurvedic hair care for over 1,000 years. While aloe vera cleanses and conditions beautifully due to its enzymes and proteolytic properties, it does not foam aggressively on its own. Instead, it works as a soothing, conditioning wash that cleans without stripping. And because of the thick gel inside each leaf, it conditions at the same time. Aloe vera contains over 75 active compounds. Among them are enzymes that reduce scalp inflammation, amino acids that strengthen hair at the root, and vitamins that support the skin underneath. You do not need a lab to extract these. You snap a leaf, you scrape the gel, you rub it into wet hair. It works! Aloe grows from a single leaf cutting placed in a pot of soil. It grows indoors. It grows outdoors in warm climates. It grows in a bucket on a fire escape in Brooklyn. It requires almost no water. It requires almost no attention. One plant produces enough leaves to wash hair for a year. One plant produces offsets that become new plants. The supply multiplies while you sleep. You already had the answer in your home. You just never knew to ask the question. 5 plants. 5 continents of traditional knowledge, thousands of years of documented use. Every one of them produces a natural compound that foams in water, lifts dirt, and rinses clean. Every one of them was replaced within a single generation by a synthetic chemical that was originally developed to clean factory equipment. Every one of them still works. Every one of them grows with minimal input. None of them generate recurring revenue. The shampoo industry did not eliminate these plants through force. No company sent agents to pull soapwort from English hedgerows or confiscate soap nut trees from Indian courtyards. The mechanism was simpler than that. A plant that grows in a bucket cannot be advertised. A dried pod that lasts 6 months cannot sustain a subscription. A tree that produces fruit for 90 years cannot justify annual purchases. A root you harvest from your own yard cannot be placed on a shelf at markup. Research follows funding. Funding follows patents. Patents require synthetic, controlled, reproducible compounds made in facilities with licensing agreements and supply chains. A garden cannot be patented. A yucca root cannot be trademarked. A grandmother in a village in Tamil Nadu washing her hair with shikai powder cannot be monetized. The same pattern happened with white clover. For 80 years, American lawn seed mixes contained clover because clover fertilizes soil for free. Then, the herbicide industry needed new markets. They removed clover from the mixes. They sold chemicals to kill what they had previously sold as beneficial. 3 generations later, homeowners spend billions on fertilizer that clover would have provided at no cost. The plants on this list face no deliberate campaign. No one banned soapwort. No one outlawed Retha. The system did not need to suppress them. It just needed to stop mentioning them. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. 3 generations grew up without ever hearing the word shikakai, not because anyone hid it, because no one profited from revealing it. But the plants do not care about revenue streams. Soapwort is still spreading through abandoned lots across England. Soap nut trees are still producing fruit in Indian courtyards after 90 years. Yucca is still standing in the desert, waiting. Aloe is still sitting on your windowsill doing nothing because nobody told you what it could do. Now you know. Think about what happens every June. Drugstores in Chicago, Atlanta, Houston, and Miami all do the same thing. They move the insect repellent to the front of the store, bright yellow cans, green labels promising protection. Families walk in, grab a can or two, and walk out without thinking twice. They have done this every summer for decades. Their parents did it before them. The ritual feels permanent, like mosquitoes and chemical spray have always gone together. But they have not. The active ingredient in most of those cans is a compound called DEET. It was not invented for backyard barbecues. The United States Army, working with the USDA, developed it following their experiences in World War II to protect soldiers from mosquito-borne illnesses in jungle combat zones. The compound they created was powerful. It was also a solvent. It dissolves plastic. It eats through synthetic fabric. It strips the finish off wooden furniture. That is the substance you rub into your forearms before sitting on the porch. DEET enters your bloodstream within 2 hours of skin application. Researchers have detected it in human urine samples. The Environmental Protection Agency classifies it as slightly toxic. It washes off in the shower and enters municipal water systems. Government scientists found DEET in roughly 75% of surface water samples across the United States. The chemical designed for soldiers in the Pacific jungle now flows through watersheds in Ohio, Virginia, and California. We spray it on our children, and then we wash it into the water supply. The option existed before DEET was ever invented. In the early 2000s, a pair of entomologists in the Midwest ran an experiment that should have changed everything. They set up a controlled laboratory apparatus with 2 chambers and released Aedes aegypti mosquitoes into it. This is the species responsible for transmitting dengue fever, Zika virus, and yellow fever. This is not a nuisance mosquito. This is a killer. One chamber was treated with DEET at the standard consumer concentration. The other was treated with a compound extracted from a common plant. A plant you have seen 1,000 times, a plant sold in pet stores, a plant growing in sidewalk cracks and empty lots in virtually every state in the country. The plant is catnip. Yes, the same plant in the cat aisle at PetSmart, the same plant your neighbor grows in a pot that her tabby rolls around in every afternoon. Nepeta cataria, a member of the mint family, available in every garden center for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. The compound is called nepeta-lactone, and when those researchers compared it to DEET, the results were not close. In that laboratory test, it took 1/10 the amount of nepeta-lactone to achieve the same initial repellent effect as DEET. It was 10 times more potent in a controlled environment. The researchers presented these findings at the largest chemistry conference in the United States. Science journalists reported the results. Then something remarkable happened. Nothing, no product launches, no headlines on the evening news, no reformulation by Off or Repel or any major brand. The $6 billion industry that should have cared the most simply continued selling the same cans with the same military solvent inside. The study has been publicly available for more than 20 years. You are only hearing about it now. The plant you bought for $3 to entertain your cat contains a compound that outperforms the most widely sold mosquito repellent on Earth by a factor of 10. And for a long time, major corporations struggled to turn it into a long-lasting commercial product you could buy. The reason is not complicated. It is arithmetic. DEET is manufactured in chemical plants in Jacksonville, Florida, and Greensboro, North Carolina, and industrial facilities across China and India. It requires petroleum derivatives, specialized reactors, quality control laboratories, regulatory filings, branded packaging, national distribution networks, and multi-million-dollar advertising campaigns. Every single step in that chain generates revenue for someone. Every step creates a job. Every step justifies a budget line. Catnip grows in a crack in a sidewalk. You cannot patent a plant that has been growing wild for thousands of years. You cannot build a subscription model around something that self-seeds every autumn and comes back every spring without asking. You cannot charge $23 for a product your customer can grow in a coffee can on a fire escape in Brooklyn. The economics do not work. Not for the manufacturer, not for the retailer, not for the shareholders. They work beautifully for you. They just do not work for anyone trying to sell you something. So the industry did not suppress catnip. It did something more effective. It ignored it. It funded studies on its own compounds. It filled the shelf space at Home Depot and Walmart and Target. The absence of catnip from those shelves is not the result of a secret meeting in a boardroom. It is the result of a system that only amplifies what it can sell. Now let me tell you what nepeta-lactone actually does to a mosquito, because this is not simply a smell they dislike, this is something much more violent. Most people assume that mosquito repellents work by masking your scent. DET partially functions this way. It interferes with the mosquito's ability to detect the carbon dioxide you exhale, which is the primary signal they use to locate you. It makes you harder to find. But it does not make you painful to approach. Catnip does. Nepeta-lactone activates a specific receptor in insects called TRPA1. This is an irritant receptor. In humans, this same receptor is what fires when you are exposed to tear gas. It is what makes your eyes burn when you cut a raw onion. It is what makes wasabi feel like it is attacking the inside of your skull. When a mosquito encounters nepeta-lactone in the air, its TRPA1 receptors fire. The insect experiences something equivalent to flying into a cloud of tear gas. This is not mild discomfort. This is neurological alarm. The mosquito's entire system screams at it to reverse course and leave the area immediately. This is why crushed catnip does not just reduce the number of mosquitoes that land on you, it clears the zone. And the behavioral observation that mosquitoes flee from catnip is not new. Folk herbalists across England, France, and Germany planted catnip near doorways for centuries. Families in rural Appalachia rubbed the leaves on their arms before working in fields. Communities in parts of Iran and Central Asia used plants in the same genus to keep biting insects away from sleeping quarters. They did not know about TRPA1 receptors. They watched what happened, and they repeated what worked. The science caught up 300 years later. And mosquitoes are not the only insects that flee from catnip. The same receptor exists in flies, cockroaches, and stable flies that plague livestock. Researchers found that nepetalactone repels certain tick species. Tick populations are expanding across the northeastern United States every year. Lyme disease cases have tripled in 2 decades. And a plant that repels the insect carrying it grows wild in the same forest where people pick up ticks on their ankles every summer. One plant, multiple threats, 0 chemicals. So now you know what the plant is, you know what it does. The only question left is how to turn this into a permanent mosquito repellent supply. That never runs out and never costs you another dollar. Catnip is a perennial herb in the mint family. It grows back every single year without replanting. It is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. That covers nearly the entire continental United States from northern Minnesota to southern Texas. It covers most of the United Kingdom, Central Europe, and temperate climates across Asia and Australia. It grows in poor soil, rich soil, clay, sand, and rocky ground that would kill most garden plants in a week. It tolerates drought once established. It tolerates neglect. It tolerates gardeners who forget it exists for 3 months and then suddenly remember they own it. These are not the characteristics of a delicate herb garden specimen. These are the characteristics of a survival plant. If you are starting from seed, sow directly into soil after your last frost date. Catnip seeds need light to germinate. Do not bury them. Press them gently onto the soil surface and mist with water. Germination takes 7 to 14 days. If you do not want to wait, walk into any garden center. You will find catnip seedlings for $2 to $4. Plant the seedling, water it once, walk away. That is the entire process. A single plant produces hundreds of seeds each fall. Those seeds drop to the ground and overwinter in the soil. The following spring, they germinate without your involvement. By year 2, your single plant has become a dozen. By year 3, you have a patch. By year 5, you have a permanent supply that renews itself every season like clockwork. You will never buy another can of repellent. The plant handles everything. For apartment dwellers, a 12-inch pot on a balcony or patio is sufficient. Grow your repellent in the exact location where you need it. Yes, cats will find your catnip. Grow it in hanging baskets or elevated planters they cannot reach. Place wire cages over ground plants during establishment, or simply grow enough that the cats take their share and you still have plenty. Most cats settle into a routine after the first few weeks and the plants recover between visits. Now here is how you turn the living plant into active repellent on your skin. Pick 5 to 8 fresh leaves, crush them between your palms, roll them aggressively between your fingers. You will feel the leaves bruise and go damp. A sharp minty smell will hit you. That is nepetalactone releasing from the broken cell walls of the leaf. Rub the crushed material directly onto your forearms, ankles, neck, and behind your ears. These are the zones mosquitoes target because blood vessels run close to the surface there. You can expect a brief window of solid repellent effect from a single application, but natural oils evaporate quickly, so you will need to reapply every 2 to 3 hours. The compound breaks down faster than synthetic chemicals in sunlight and body heat. That is the trade-off. You reapply with leaves from a plant that will never stop growing instead of reapplying from a can that will eventually run empty. For a more convenient method, steep a large handful of fresh leaves in just boiled water for 15 minutes. Strain, cool, and pour into a spray bottle. This catnip tea spray stores in your refrigerator for about a week. For patio defense, place catnip containers at the four corners of your outdoor seating area. When you sit down, crush the top growth on each plant with your hand. This releases a burst of nepetalactone into the surrounding air and creates a vapor perimeter around your table. For stronger effect, crush a bowl full of fresh leaves and place it at table center. You can layer your defense with companion planting. Lemon balm, lavender, and citronella grass each produce their own mild repellent compounds. But understand the hierarchy. The research puts catnip at 10 times DEET. The others operate at a fraction of that. Catnip is your anchor. The others are supporting players. Once your catnip establishes itself around your patio, you will have an annually returning repellent border. Every April, the plants push new growth. By June, they are full and producing nepetalactone again. You did nothing. You bought nothing. The plant remembered its job and showed up. This is the pattern that repeats across every industry that sells you a solution to a problem nature already solved. The omega-3 supplement market generates $4 billion a year selling you fish oil capsules, while a self-seeding plant called Perilla produces the highest omega-3 concentration ever recorded and grows back every spring on its own. The lawn fertilizer industry erased white clover from seed mixes so they could sell you the nitrogen that clover was producing for free. The same structure, the same logic. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold disappears from public awareness. Catnip has been growing on this continent since European settlers brought it in the 1700s. It escaped their gardens within a generation. It naturalized across every temperate region. It has been here for 300 years, growing in meadows and roadsides and backyard edges, producing nepetalactone every single summer while Americans stood in checkout lines buying cans of DEET. The mosquitoes will come back next summer. They always do. And next May, you will have a choice. You can drive to the store and buy another can with the yellow label and the plastic safety cap and the ingredient list you have never read. You can spray a World War II-era solvent on your arms and your children's arms and tell yourself it is just what people do. Or you can walk to your patio, crush 3 leaves between your fingers, and solve the problem the way it could have been solved 20 years ago. The plant is already there. It has been waiting. Picture a farmhouse in southern England sometime in the 1600s. Stone walls, thatched roof, a root cellar packed with potatoes and grain for winter. Mice should be everywhere. They are not. Walk around the foundation and you will notice something growing at every doorway. A low, dense plant with dark green leaves and square stems, deliberately placed where the wall meets the ground. This is not decoration. This is pest control. And every farmer's wife in the village knows exactly what it does and why it is there. Travel forward 100 years to colonial Pennsylvania. German settlers clearing new land, building new homes, facing the same rodent problem that has followed human civilization since the first grain stores in ancient Mesopotamia. These families did not carry traps across the Atlantic. They carried seeds, small pouches of dried herbs tucked between clothing and tools. Within the first growing season, those herbs went into the ground around every door frame, every window ledge, every gap in the log walls where something small might squeeze through. In the mountain villages of Japan, farm families bundled dried aromatic leaves and hung them near rice stores. In Korean households, sachets of crushed herbs sat inside grain jars. In the Mediterranean, Greek and Italian homes grew specific plants in terracotta pots along exterior walls. The same principle on every continent, the same result in every kitchen. Mice stayed away. None of these families read a research paper. None of them understood receptor pathways or volatile compounds. They understood something simpler. When this plant grows by the door, the mice do not come inside. When it does not grow there, they do. Knowledge survived empires. It survived plagues. It survived centuries of war and famine and migration. It did not survive the 1890s. In 1894, a man named William Hooker filed a patent in the United States for a spring-loaded snap trap. A simple device, a wooden base, a metal bar, a trigger plate. It cost pennies to manufacture, and it could be sold in every general store in America. The snap trap offered a definitive mechanical end to a household pest, something a doorway plant could never completely guarantee, but it could be packaged, shipped, and sold for profit. The plants could not. Within 2 decades, hardware stores across the country stocked snap traps on their shelves. Within 4 decades, chemical companies introduced anticoagulant rodenticides. Warfarin-based poisons entered the consumer market in the 1950s. The pellets worked slowly. A mouse ate the bait, wandered back into the wall, and bled internally for days. The product required constant repurchase. A box of poison lasts a few weeks, then you buy another box, and another and another. By the time your grandparents were raising children, the herb at the doorway was gone. Not because it stopped working, because nobody was selling it to them anymore. The knowledge skipped a generation, then it skipped another. Now, most people alive today have never heard that a plant could keep mice away. They have only heard of traps and poison. That is a market. The global pest control industry today generates over $23 billion in annual revenue. That number covers everything from commercial extermination services to the glue traps you buy at the hardware store on a Saturday afternoon. The mouse and rat control segment alone accounts for billions. Snap traps, glue boards, bait stations, electronic traps, ultrasonic plug-in devices. Every product in that aisle shares one feature. You have to buy it again. Glue traps dry out and lose adhesion. Snap traps break or lose their spring tension. Poison bait gets consumed and must be replaced. Ultrasonic devices need electricity around the clock, and multiple studies have shown that mice adapt to the sound frequencies within days, rendering the devices useless. Every solution on that shelf is designed to be temporary. A temporary solution to a permanent problem is a subscription. Now, here is what they do not put on the packaging. Anticoagulant rodenticides do not only kill mice. A poisoned mouse becomes slow and disoriented. It stumbles into the open. A barn owl sees easy prey. The owl eats the mouse. The poison transfers. The owl dies. This is called secondary poisoning, and it kills tens of thousands of raptors, hawks, foxes, and household cats and dogs every single year across North America and Europe. The poison you place behind your refrigerator may end up killing the owl nesting in the tree behind your house. The industry has known this for decades. The products remain on shelves because the products generate revenue. Now consider what a potted plant generates. Nothing. No repeat purchases, no replacement cartridges, no subscription fees, no quarterly earnings for shareholders. A plant that grows in a pot, returns every spring, and keeps mice out of your kitchen is economically invisible. It cannot be advertised because there is no margin in it. It cannot be researched at scale because no corporation will fund a study that makes their products unnecessary. Search any major medical database for rodenticide efficacy studies. You will find thousands, many of them funded directly by chemical manufacturers. Search that same database for botanical rodent repellent studies. You will find a fraction. The ratio is not explained by effectiveness, it is explained by funding. The money flows toward patentable solutions. A plant that anyone can grow in a $5 pot cannot be patented, so the research goes elsewhere. The knowledge stays buried, and you keep buying traps. The plant is peppermint, Mentha piperita. And the reason it works is not because mice dislike the smell, it is because the smell causes them physical pain. A mouse has over 1,200 olfactory receptor genes. You have roughly 400. A mouse experiences the world through scent the way you experience it through sight. Everything a mouse knows about its environment comes through its nose. Where the food is, where the predator is, where the safe path runs along the baseboard in the dark. That nose is the most sensitive instrument in the mouse's body. It is also the most vulnerable. Peppermint leaves and peppermint oil contain a compound called menthol. When you smell menthol, you feel a cool, tingling sensation. That is because menthol activates cold sensing receptors in your nasal tissue. The sensation is mild for you because your receptor density is low and your brain filters the signal. A mouse has no such luxury. At the concentrations a living peppermint plant produces, especially in an enclosed space like a doorway or a gap beside a pipe, the menthol hits those receptors with overwhelming force. While menthol triggers a cool sensation in humans, a mouse's incredibly dense olfactory system perceives it as an overwhelming, intense sensory overload. In an enclosed space, this irritation is powerful enough to make a foraging mouse choose a path of less resistance. The pain receptor fires, the brain registers danger, and the animal turns around. This is not a preference. This is a survival reflex, and it triggers every single time the mouse encounters that concentration of menthol at close range. While mice easily habituate to ultrasonic sounds, the intense aroma of pure menthol remains a constant sensory disincentive. However, unlike a physical burn from a hot stove, if a mouse is hungry enough, it can and will tolerate the scent to reach food. Now here is what you do with this information. Method 1. The potted plant barrier. While a living plant will not block a hole physically, placing bruised, fresh peppermint near potential entry points creates an active scent barrier that encourages mice to look elsewhere. One critical point: do not plant peppermint directly in the ground unless you want it everywhere. This plant spreads through underground runners called rhizomes, and it does so aggressively. A single plant in open soil will colonize an entire garden bed within one season. The POT is not a limitation. The POT is the control strategy. Keep it contained, keep it at the entry point, and let it do its work. Peppermint is a perennial. In most climates across the United States, Europe, and temperate Asia, the plant dies back in winter and returns on its own every spring. You buy it once, you water it when the soil feels dry, you trim it back occasionally to encourage fresh growth because younger leaves contain higher concentrations of menthol than older ones. That is the entire maintenance requirement. One plant, one pot, years of rodent deterrence at each entry point. Method 2. The oil on cotton technique. This is for the places where a living plant cannot go: inside your walls, behind your stove, under your sink, inside the cabinet where you keep cereal boxes, inside the crawl space beneath your bathroom, anywhere indoors where you have seen droppings or heard scratching. Buy pure peppermint essential oil, not fragrance oil, not peppermint extract from the baking aisle, pure essential oil from the plant, Mentha piperita. The bottle will cost you between $8 and $15 and it will last months. Take a cotton ball or a cotton pad. Apply 10 to 15 drops of oil directly onto the cotton. Place that cotton ball at the suspected entry point or activity area, behind the refrigerator, along the baseboard where the wall meets the floor, inside the gap around the dryer vent hose, near the water heater closet. Anywhere a mouse has been, put a saturated cotton ball. The oil evaporates over time. Refresh each cotton ball every 10 to 14 days. In winter, when heating systems dry out indoor air, you may need to refresh weekly. In cooler, more humid spaces like basements and crawl spaces, the oil holds longer. Adjust based on what you observe. The strongest approach combines both methods. Living potted plants at every exterior entry point, creating a perimeter barrier. Oil-soaked cotton at every interior pathway, creating a secondary defense line inside the walls and cabinets. The mouse encounters menthol at the foundation and turns away. If it somehow finds an alternate route inside, it encounters menthol again at the interior gap and turns away a second time. Layered defense. No poison in the food chain. No dead mouse decomposing inside your wall. No owl dying in your backyard. The plant does not care that the pest control industry generates $23 billion a year. It does not care that no corporation benefits from your knowing this. It does not care that 3 generations of families bought traps and poison for a problem it solves by simply existing in a pot by the door. Peppermint has grown on this planet for thousands of years. It grew beside farmhouse doors in England before the Industrial Revolution. It grew in colonial American herb gardens before the patent office existed. It grew in monastery courtyards across medieval Europe, where monks documented its uses in manuscripts that still survive today. It is still growing. Right now, in nurseries and garden centers within 10 minutes of wherever you are sitting, a few dollars, one pot, a handful of cotton balls, and a small bottle of oil. That is the entire cost of solving a problem that an entire industry depends on you never solving. The knowledge was never hidden. It was just never profitable enough for anyone to remind you. Here is something that should bother you. The sponge sitting next to your kitchen sink right now is made from polyurethane foam. That is a petroleum product. It was born in a chemical plant, sealed in plastic wrap, and shipped across an ocean to sit on your counter for 2 weeks before you throw it away. Then you buy another one, and another one, and another one for the rest of your life. In 2026, researchers discovered that a single type of common cleaning sponge releases more than 1 trillion microplastic fibers worldwide every single month. Trillions of microscopic plastic fragments flowing from kitchen sinks into waterways, into soil, into the food chain. Scientists have now confirmed the presence of microplastics in human blood. A product designed to clean your home is contaminating everything it touches. The numbers behind this are staggering. Households in the United Kingdom alone throw away 400 million sponges every single year. Each one takes approximately 500 years to decompose in a landfill. In the United States, multiply that waste across 122 million households, replacing sponges every other week, 52 sponges per household per year. The global sponge and scouring pad market is valued at over $5.5 billion. It is projected to reach $6.5 billion by 2030. For a product that is consumed weekly, repurchased monthly, and never questioned. Every kitchen sink on Earth becomes a recurring revenue stream from the moment someone moves in until the moment they leave. That is the business model, not cleanliness, revenue, and the waste is extraordinary. Polyurethane foam, melamine resin, nylon scouring pads fused to synthetic backings, none of it biodegradable. All of it breaking into particles too small to see but large enough to enter your bloodstream. A product marketed for hygiene has become the source of contamination it claims to prevent. Here is what should bother you more. Before plastic existed, human beings still needed to scrub. They still needed to wash dishes, clean surfaces, exfoliate skin, and filter water. They had been doing it for thousands of years, and they found something. Not an animal, not a mineral, a plant. The record stretches back further than most people imagine. In ancient Egypt, as far back as 3,500 BCE, a specific vine was cultivated along the Nile. Pharaohs and queens bathed with the dried fibers of its fruit. The Egyptians called it a natural sponge. They grew it deliberately. They traded it deliberately. They passed that knowledge down through dynasties because it worked. In China and India, the same vine appears in records spanning thousands of years. Farmers across Southeast Asia cultivated it as both a food crop and a cleaning tool. The young fruit was eaten at the dinner table. The mature fruit was dried and used to scrub the kitchen after dinner. One plant, two entirely different purposes, depending on when you harvested it. These were not primitive people making do with what they had while waiting for something better. These were civilizations that built irrigation networks and trading routes spanning entire continents. They had access to sea sponges, to animal hides, to woven cloths. They chose this vine deliberately. They cultivated specific varieties deliberately, and they maintained that choice for millennia because nothing they found worked better. By the late 1800s, the plant had reached the West. In 1893, a journalist in New York reported that these natural sponges were in enormous demand, with enthusiasm building to place one in every wash basin in the land. American and European households adopted them rapidly. Before and during World War II, the Allied military used the dried fibers of this vine as oil filters in diesel engines and steam engines. The military trusted this plant to filter engine oil inside combat vehicles. Most of those sponges were imported from Japan. Then the attack on Pearl Harbor cut off the supply. Synthetic foam arrived shortly after. Cheap to manufacture, easy to brand, designed to fall apart so you would buy another one. And within a single generation, nobody remembered the vine. But the vine did not disappear everywhere. It only disappeared from the places that replaced it with plastic. Walk through a market in Cairo on any given morning. You will see women selling dried fibrous cylinders stacked in neat pyramids, natural scrubbers grown along the Nile Delta just as they have been for centuries. The same rich alluvial soil, the same steady heat between 25 and 30 degrees, the same vine, the same hands peeling the same gourds. Walk into a kitchen in Guangzhou, China. A grandmother is slicing a young green gourd into thin rounds and tossing them into a hot wok with garlic and sesame oil. In southern China, they call it sigua. It is a summer staple, stir-fried with eggs, steamed with soy, served in soups. The same plant that dries into a sponge is eaten for dinner every single night across hundreds of millions of households. In northern India and Pakistan, they call it turai. It shows up in curries and stews. In Vietnam, they call it muop and add it to clear shrimp soups. In the Philippines, they stir-fry it with tomatoes and call it patola. Nearly every part of the plant is edible. The young fruits, the tender green tendrils, even the flowers. Hundreds of millions of people across Asia eat this plant every single week. And in the West, most people think a loofah is a sea creature, 3 continents, thousands of years, a vine that feeds you when it is young and scrubs your kitchen when it matures. No other crop on Earth serves both functions from the same harvest. The modern synthetic sponge emerged in the middle of the 20th century. Polyurethane foam stamped out by the million, color-coded, shrink-wrapped, branded. The real revolution was not hygienic, it was commercial. Sponge companies spent decades convincing an entire planet that the only legitimate cleaning tool came from a factory. Anything that grew on a vine was primitive, backward, something people used before they knew better. The marketing worked so completely that the question stopped being asked. Nobody asked whether the old method worked. It had simply been reclassified as something people did before they had access to real products. Today, the industry approaches $6 billion globally. A product consumed weekly, repurchased monthly, never questioned. Meanwhile, a vine that grows its own sponge in 90 days generates zero recurring revenue for any corporation. You cannot patent a gourd. You cannot brand a wild plant that has been cultivated across 3 continents for 5,000 years. You cannot create a subscription model for something that reseeds itself every autumn and climbs back up the fence every spring without being asked. There is no pack to sell monthly. No premium scrubbing version at twice the price. The vine grows. You harvest the fruit, you peel it, you use it. The vine grows another one. The transaction is between you and the plant. No middleman, no shareholder, no quarterly earnings call. The sponge industry depends on 3 things: weekly disposal, monthly repurchase, and the universal belief that no alternative exists. A vine that replaces the product, composts itself when finished, and regrows its own supply threatens every single link in that chain. This is not conspiracy. This is economics. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed disappears from consciousness. Now let me tell you exactly what they replaced. The vine is called loofah, Loofah aegyptiaca. The dried sponge cut from its mature fruit is what most people call a loofah. And here is the part that surprises nearly everyone who learns it for the first time. A loofah is not a sea creature. It is not harvested from the ocean floor. It is a climbing vine in the cucumber family that produces large cylindrical gourds on a trellis or a fence or an arbor in somebody's garden. The vines are aggressive growers, up to 15 meters tall in a single season, large yellow flowers, broad star-shaped leaves. The plant produces both male and female flowers on the same vine, and each fruit can grow over 1 meter long. When those gourds mature fully and dry on the vine, the interior flesh transforms into a dense network of tough, interconnected fibers. It becomes a three-dimensional mesh that no engineer has successfully replicated with synthetic materials. You harvest the dried gourd, you peel the papery brown skin, you shake out the seeds. What remains is a natural sponge that grew on a vine in the sun. No factory, no petroleum, no chemical processing, just a gourd that decided to become a cleaning tool while hanging on a fence. The dried fiber is primarily cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, the same structural compounds that give wood its strength, but arranged in a porous mesh that scrubs without scratching. The plant has been used in traditional medicine across Asia and Africa for centuries. Different cultures have documented its use for skin conditions, inflammation, and digestive issues. The compounds present in the plant include saponins, flavonoids, and phenolic compounds with antibacterial properties. But the application that excites researchers most right now is not medical, it is industrial. Material scientists are studying loofah fiber as a reinforcement material for biocomposites. The natural fiber is being tested as a replacement for synthetic materials in automotive interiors, construction panels, and sustainable packaging. The same fiber that scrubs your dishes today could line the interior of your car tomorrow. A sponge from a factory contains polyurethane and sheds microplastics with every use. A sponge from this vine contains cellulose and composts in weeks. One sits in a landfill for 500 years, the other returns to soil in a single season. Oh, and if longevity and plant science fascinate you, my friend runs a channel called The Centenarian's Garden, all about blue zone secrets and what actually helps people live past 100. Go check them out, you will not regret it. Now here is the part that changes everything for you. You can grow loofah in your own garden. The vine thrives in hardiness zones 5 through 11. That covers most of the continental United States and equivalent climates across Europe and Australia. It needs a long, warm growing season, at least 4 months of consistent heat to produce mature sponges. In cooler climates, start seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Soak the seeds overnight. The seed coat is hard, and soaking speeds up germination dramatically. This vine needs something to climb: a sturdy trellis, a chain link fence, an old arbor, a cattle panel arched between 2 posts. Give this vine a vertical surface, and it will cover it completely in 1 season. Full sun, warm soil, consistent water during establishment. Once the roots take hold, the vine becomes vigorous and productive with almost no additional input from you. If you want to eat it, harvest the young fruits when they reach 6 to 8 inches long. They taste like a mild zucchini. Stir-fry them with garlic. Toss them into summer soups. If you want sponges, leave the fruits on the vine until the skin turns brown and papery and the gourd feels light when you shake it. That means the interior fibers have fully developed and the moisture is gone. Peel the dry skin, shake out the seeds, rinse the fiber under running water. Let it dry in the sun. You are holding a sponge that grew in your garden over a single long season. Each fruit produces between 500 and 1,000 seeds. Save them for next season. Share them with your neighbors. One single vine produces dozens of sponges per year. 1 season supplies a household for 12 months. Save the seeds and you never buy a sponge again. The vine reseeds itself, it climbs, it flowers, it fruits year after year after year. In Galicia, Spain, a company is already growing these sponges at commercial scale. The mild, humid Atlantic climate creates ideal conditions for fiber development. They are producing sponges for kitchens and bathrooms across Europe. They are experimenting with computer casings made from loofah fiber, with building insulation panels, with biodegradable packaging. The future of this plant is not limited to your sink. It is material science. It is construction. It is the quiet replacement of petroleum-based products across entire industries that do not yet realize what is coming. But the vine does not care about industries. It does not care about market projections or material science conferences. It cares about climbing. It cares about flowering in the heat and producing gourds that dry into perfect fibrous cylinders while hanging in the sun. It has done this across 3 continents for 5,000 years. It survived the arrival of synthetic plastic. It survived the entire 20th century. And right now, somewhere along the Nile Delta, a farmer is peeling the brown skin off a dried gourd and stacking the pale sponge inside for market. The same motion that Egyptian hands performed 5,000 years ago in the same soil, along the same river, under the same sun.
The science confirms what traditional knowledge preserved for thousands of years. The most effective hygiene products require no purchase, no factory, and no attention beyond recognizing what is already growing. Where the personal care industry taught you to see only weeds and wild brush, there were antimicrobial compounds stronger than alcohol, natural fluoride that rebuilds enamel, saponins that lather without sulfates, and fibers that outlast any synthetic sponge. The industries profit when you believe the only clean option comes in a bottle. These plants never hid. We just stopped being told they were there.